And hi everyone, and welcome to SWPL My Story, and it's one that I've been really looking forward to today. We're joined by new Chief Executive of the Spartans Foundation, Debbi McCulloch. How are you, Debbie?
Very well, thank you. Delighted to be here, so thank you for inviting me on.
Not at all. Thanks for coming on. So, you're a face that's well known in the SWPL, over 10 years at the helm at Spartans, but very recently you've stepped down from that position as the manager and now taking on your chief exec role at the club, which obviously you're heavily invested in now. I'm assuming must have been a big decision for you being involved for such a long time, but one that you'll be relishing to get your teeth into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one of the hardest decisions of my life, and it probably didn't hit me until this week, until it became a reality, how big the decision was. But I knew for myself, in terms of, if I was to be successful or have been successful in securing the CEO job within the Community Foundation, that I had to make that my primary focus. And obviously for the last 18 months, I've been the deputy CEO, and I've found it increasingly difficult to try and get the balance between being able to give the team and the club 100% of me on and off the pitch, and also my day job, which I love dearly and is a really important part of my life. So, when I was balancing it up and thinking about it, I made the commitment quite early on, back in October, that was the decision that I was going to make. And I think for me too, moving into the role and having the pressure of being a CEO, as much as I want to give that 100%, I also want to have a better work-life balance. And that's something that I've really struggled with, probably for the last 2 to 3 years post-COVID. Prior to this role at Spartans, I worked up at Ross County for 5 years, and, never really got to see much of my family, or not as much as I wanted. And when I moved down to Edinburgh 15 years ago, I made the commitment that I would spend more time with them. And unfortunately, that's not been the case. However, they've been extremely supportive, and they know how much the football side of things has meant to me. So yeah, that work-life balance, prioritizing the CEO role and making sure that I give that everything I've got. And also along with making sure that the club has someone that's able to give 100% and commit fully to it. And I knew that that was going to be hugely challenging going forward. So weighing up the pros and cons, and yeah, ultimately taking that decision has been one that I know will give me happiness further down the road, but it's probably been quite a sad couple of weeks and a couple of months for me, knowing that I'm not going to be on the pitch anymore.
So as I've said already, it's over 10 years that you were the manager of Spartans. It's been such a massive difference, never mind the last 10 years, last 2, 3 years in the league. But you just kind of summarise your view on it from when you first took over to when you stepped down last week, and how much the game has progressed in that period.
Yeah, I mean, there's been multiple sliding door moments in the game over the last 10 years. I think for me, the game becoming more professional, whether that's on and off the pitch, and the players having access to better resources, whether that's medical advice, whether it's protein after training, whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's nutritional advice. And then also the commitment, like our players have an opportunity here to train 5 times a week. Kind of 12, 13 years ago, our players were training 3 times a week, and one of those slots was 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. The times are much more accessible. And I think the commitment from the players and the staff has grown incredibly over that period of time. In terms of like match day, I think, the main difference for me is that the quality of the teams in the league and the competition has increased. 10 years ago, you could be sitting 6-7-0 up at half time, and you knew that the next 45 minutes was going to take care of itself, where now there's a huge amount of work done towards the tactical element of the game. You have the players that are technically and physically at a level that they can compete, but tactically you have to provide them with real input and insight around about how you want your team to play, but also how the opposition are going to play, so that you know, ultimately we know that we go into games where we're against full-time teams, and realistically the first 45 minutes we can compete well. It's that next 45 minutes where, you know, you look at their bench and their players that they're bringing on, and how they're going to influence the game, and there's also the physical aspect to it as well, you know, especially midweek games where we have players that, you know, are running in after, you know, 10-hour shifts. But if you're playing a full-time team, they've been able to relax the whole day, get massages, have a team meal beforehand. So it's a very different environment nowadays. It's a very different reality. And I think for us here at Spartans, we just need to ensure that we stay ahead of that curve and that we keep up, because ultimately, you know, our SWPL 1 status is the most important thing to this club. We want our players and youth players to, you know, aspire to playing at the highest level. And it's important for as a club here that we give them that opportunity to do so. So yeah, big changes, very much, you know, more pressure, a higher level of demand and expectation, more coverage via social media than there ever has been before. And it's all great things for the game, but it is something that we're really aware of as a club, that we make sure that we provide the players and the staff with the support that they require to be able to keep at that level, and as I said before, to ensure that we, you know, retain our SWPL 1 status.
As you were saying there, the competitiveness of the league is increasing all the time. The standards are increasing all the time, whether that be from maybe your full-time clubs with bigger budgets being able to bring players in from elsewhere, youth players that are coming through that are training at a higher standard across all clubs from a much younger age is keeping bringing up the standards. So to reflect on the season so far, and I think myself as well as you probably wouldn't expect Spartans to be where they are at the moment. It's probably a pat in the back to the league to show that the other teams are competing at that level. But probably from the outside, inconsistency. But there's a lot of teams that fall into that boat. But inconsistency is probably the key thing. I feel for this season for the team. Is that something that you felt as well? Because they've never been a million miles away. It's just maybe lapses in concentration. I'm thinking of the game against Hearts as an example, being ahead so late on in the game. But it's just these fine margins when the standards are so high.
Yeah, and you describe it really well, and you use the words that I'm going to use. You know, it has been fine margins. You know, we're 3-1 up against Hearts. We've a great opportunity to make it 4-1. We don't take that. Similar game, you know, against Dundee United, where they scored two worldies, you know, excellent individual goals from a free kick, and, you know, a counter-attack situation, a game that we dominated. The Aberdeen game away, we lose 2-1, but we just come back that little bit too late. But in the second half, we dominate it. So I think we've had quite a lot of injuries this season as well that have been out with our control. They've not been soft tissue injuries. They've been more impact injuries, and how you stop them in a game of football, I'm not too sure, or how you stop a player in a Spartans jersey not being a warrior and willing to run through brick walls for the team is something, again, that's meant that, you know, the kind of injury room's been a wee bit more extensive than what we'd liked, which has not allowed us to have as good a team or good a depth. You know, going back to the Hearts game, you know, that last 15 minutes, Hearts absolutely battered us, you know, and that was because we were tired. And we were tired because we'd given everything for 75 minutes and got ourselves in a situation that we really should have got something out of the game, but we didn't. So those fine margins are something that, you know, we'll really focus on and look to close and help the new head coach, Jack Beasley, to be able to try and eliminate those challenges and those fine margins. I think, you know, looking at a league, there's probably 3 levels of budget. You know, you've got your 5 teams that are probably, you know, invest in excess of 350,000 pounds. Then you've got a kind of middle teams of like 4 that are maybe, you know, investing between, you know, and these are me just using hypothetical figures, but it's just the way that I see it. You know, that are maybe investing between 50 to 80k, and then you've got teams, you know, that are maybe investing around about 50,000 pounds. So I think in that respect, I think it's difficult for us to compete. We don't have, you know, 350,000 pounds here that we can just invest in our women's team. The club has been excellent in supporting us, over the last couple of years to make sure that we have a player budget, that we're able to invest in bringing 2 players over from America as well. But staying ahead of that's difficult, and competing with that's challenging. So I think that's another area that we have to look at. But my hope is that I think we don't have a different changing room for the changing room from the team that won 10 games consecutively at the end of last season. And I think, football's all about confidence. And once they get that confidence and they get that result where we maybe had a wee bit of luck and fortune, then I think they'll thrive off of that and change that kind of like survival mode to that thriving mode and really push on. And, we want to be a team that's in the top 6. Is that achievable right now based on budget and level of resources? Probably not, but that's something that we're definitely going to discuss looking ahead to next season. For now, it's about making sure that we get ourselves out of that relegation spot and that we push on as hard as we possibly can to finish as high up the table as we can.
So you've now stepped into this role, the chief executive role for the Spartans Community Foundation. So what are like maybe your shorter term goals, and then the overall plan? How do you envisage the club growing now that you're able to strategically plan for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the foundation's the charitable arm and the heart of the football club. It's a charity, and we obviously run the Ainsley Park as a facility, which has the football club as its main tenant, along with other clubs that train here and play here. I think for me, we need to maintain our position as a leading sports-based social enterprise and deliver significant social impact in North Edinburgh. That's why I get out of bed every single day. I want to help this local community. We want to make it a community that isn't drowning in poverty. I think coming from Glasgow, I can say this, but Edinburgh hides its poverty extremely well. And I think that that's something that, in my new role, I have to try and influence. But everything that we do will be driven by the local community and the needs. We won't do things just to be able to tick a box or gain funding. We'll do things based around about what the need is. So if that's helping people with mold and damp and poor living conditions, we'll put resources into that. If that's helping local children, and reduce the attainment gap within primary schools and secondary schools in our local community, then we'll do our very best to support with that. I suppose our next biggest milestone, and one of the biggest projects that I'm working on currently, is that we just recently signed off on a new youth workspace, an education space, that will be based here at Ainsley Park, in the heart of our social village here, that will ultimately give young people a brand new space to be able to come, learn, participate in football or other sports, or undertake, arts and crafts, whatever they fancy. But that new space will allow us to really bring young people to our home and allow them a situation where hopefully they can thrive and have a positive journey with us that can ultimately change their lives and give them a better future.
That's great, Debbie. Really inspiring stuff, and wish you all the very best with that. But thanks a lot for joining us today.
My pleasure, and good luck. Great to see this podcast and the cover that you're giving the women's game, and hopefully it'll help it continue to grow.
That's great, Debbie. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining us on SWPL My Story.